Hi everyone, welcome back to Just for Your Ears podcast, Positivity Series, a space where stories are not just heard but deeply felt, experienced, and remembered. Today, I invite you to slow down for a moment and step into a story that begins not with celebration or excitement but with silence. A silence that holds within it love, fear, courage, and an unknown goodbye. Imagine standing at your front door, looking into the eyes of someone you love deeply, knowing that the next step you take may lead you into uncertainty. Imagine wanting to say so much, but choosing just a few words because even words feel heavy in that moment. What would you feel? Fear, courage, or something in between that cannot even be fully expressed? Because sometimes life doesn't give us time to prepare. Sometimes ordinary days turn into extraordinary moments, and ordinary people are called to do things far beyond what they imagined. And today's story is about one such moment and one such person. In the quiet suburbs of Faridabad, a 23-year-old girl stood at her front door, her eyes meeting her mother's in a moment that felt heavier than words could carry. There was something unusual in the air that night, not noise, but a deep, unsettling silence filled with unspoken thoughts and hidden fear. And then she said that softly yet firmly, Mom, bye bye. I don't know if I will come back or not. It was a sentence no parent is ever prepared to hear. For a few seconds, time seemed to pause inside that home. No one reacted immediately because some moments are too heavy for instant responses. They stay suspended, lingering in the space between people, saying everything without saying anything at all. She then turned and stepped out into the night, not for a routine job, not for a planned journey, but for something far more uncertain. Behind her was the comfort of home, ahead her was a path of filled with unknown risks. Anyone who later heard about this moment was left wondering what kind of duty calls someone so young to walk away like that? Was she stepping into danger or stepping up to become a silent protector for people she had never even met? The answer, when it unfolded, transformed that quiet suspense into a moment of national pride. Her name is Deepika Adhana, a young pilot who was suddenly called upon for a high stake rescue mission in West Asia. At a time when global tensions were rising between nations like the United States, Israel, and Iran, many Indians found themselves stranded, uncertain, and anxious about how they would return home. The responsibility to bring them back safely fell upon Air India Express, and the mission was anything but routine. The destination was Ras Al Khaimah, and the risks surrounding the region were real and unpredictable. In a sudden turn of events, just 2 hours before departure, the assignment shifted, and it was Deepika who had to step in and take charge. There was no time for overthinking, no space for hesitation, only a decision to move forward. She became part of an all women crew led by Captain Jaswinder Kaur, a team bound not just by professional duty but by a shared sense of responsibility. Their mission sounded simple in words, yet carried immense weight. To safely evacuate 169 Indians and bring them back home. As the aircraft took off, it carried far more than passengers. It carried stories, fears, expectations, and the silent prayers of families waiting thousands of miles away. Every moment in the cockpit demanded clarity, coordination, and calm. Midway through the journey came the moment that would truly test them. The aircraft suddenly lost contact with air traffic control. Inside the cockpit, the change was immediate. The steady stream of communication that guides every flight went silent. The pilots remained composed, exchanging quick, understanding glances, knowing exactly what needed to be done. Their training took over, their focus sharpened, and every instrument in front of them became their guide. Behind them, the passengers could not fully grasp what had happened, but they could sense a shift. There is a certain kind of silence that carries tension and it quietly moves through people without explanation. At the same time, on the ground, the situation was equally tense. At the control rooms, screens that had been tracking the aircraft steadily now reflected a worrying gap. Calls were made repeatedly, frequencies checked, protocols activated. The controllers leaned forward, their attention fixed, hoping for a response, a signal, anything that would reconnect them to the flight. In those moments, time did not move normally. Seconds stretched longer, and the weight of uncertainty grew heavier. Because when communication disappears, it is not just data that is lost, it is reassurance that hanged in uncertainty. Back in the cockpit, however, calm determination continued to hold steady. Every procedure was followed with precision, every step executed with discipline. There was no space for panic, only for responsibility. The crew knew that 169 lives depended on their ability to stay composed in that very moment. And then, slowly, almost gently, the silence began to break. A signal returned. A voice came back over the radio. Contact was restored. On the ground, relief moved through control room in a visible wave. Shoulders relaxed, breaths were released, and focus shifted from uncertainty back to coordination. In the cockpit, there was no dramatic reaction, just a quiet continuation of duty because the mission was still in progress. As the aircraft approached Indira Gandhi International Airport, the atmosphere gradually transformed. What had once been tense and uncertain began to settle into reassurance. The landing was smooth, but what it carried was far more than technical success. It carried relief, gratitude, and the safe return of 169 lives. Not only lives, but 169 families. Inside the cabin, emotions finally found their way out. Some passengers closed their eyes in silent thanks, some folded their hands in prayer, and some simply let tears fall. Not out of fear anymore, but out of overwhelming relief. Families waiting at arrivals received not just their loved ones, but a moment they would never forget. But beyond this mission and beyond the headlines, there was a deeper, more personal layer to this story. For Deepika Adana, this journey was not just about fulfilling a professional responsibility. It was about honoring a dream that had been planted in her heart long ago by her late grandfather, Amrit Singh Adana, who had always wished to see her serve the nation, ideally as a pilot in the Indian Air Force. For him, flying was never just a career, it was a symbol of courage. discipline, and service to the country. And though her path led her into commercial aviation, the spirit of that dream remained unchanged. In her own simple words, she has shared that becoming a pilot was always connected to her grandfather's dream and the unwavering support of her family. On that day, as she brought 169 Indians safely back home, she was not just completing a mission, she was fulfilling a promise, carrying forward a legacy, and living the very essence of what she had grown up believing in. As we come to the end of the story, what remains with us is not just inspiration, but a deep sense of respect. Because this was not a routine flight, this was a mission that moved dangerously close to a warlike situation where uncertainty was real and risks were present. And in that moment, a young pilot chose to step forward with clarity and courage. Deepika Adhana did not just wear a uniform, she lived its meaning. She stood steady when communication was lost, she remained focused when tension was high, and she carried the responsibility of bringing every single passenger back home. That is not just professionalism, that is courage, discipline, and true patriotism. Patriotism is not always about where you stand, it is about what you stand for, especially when the situation is uncertain and the stakes are very high. On that day, 169 Indians returned home safely because one young woman and her team chose duty over fear. And that is a reminder for all of us that a nation is strengthened not just by grand gestures but by individuals who rise to the occasion and do their duty with sincerity and strength. Thank you, my dear young listeners, for listening to Just for Your Ears podcast positivity series. Until next time, stay aware, stay inspired, and carry that quiet sense of responsibility in your own way. Jai Hind.